A phallic but deadly ensemble, letters fashioned into a weaponized garment, and possibly the boldest thematic hairstyle I have ever seen. Welcome back, Nerd Squad. It's me, Amanda, and this is the top 10 dumbest villain suits we can't believe exist. We're talking about all kinds of looks here, so join me and feel free to comment with your guesses of who I'm referring to in this intro in the comments below. And then join me on this magical journey where we talk about dumb suits. I love doing it. Number 10. Typeface. What a strange one. Typeface was a fairly short-lived villain from Spider-Man comics. He made his first appearance in Peter Parker Spider-Man issue number 23. Initially, Typeface was villain Gordon Thomas. After suffering much misfortune in his life and being laid off from the only job that gave him solace, creating signs, he decided to become a villain, aiming to get retribution. He took a grease pencil and wrote a bunch of letters on his face, that big R on his forehead for retribution, and he also donned a bunch of letters, wearing them on his clothes and sometimes kind of like a necklace of sorts. This was his look. Now, he didn't really have any powers, just a passion for fonts and letters, although he was military trained, so at least he had that. His time as a criminal was quite short, as he was pretty quickly inspired by Spider-Man actually, and a memory of his brother, to seek redemption instead of retribution. But even his time as a hero also was not really that long, probably in part due to how ridiculous his outfit and his gimmick was as Typeface. He literally fought people by throwing letters at one point, so that's kind of where we're at. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, don't miss out on any of our content by clicking that subscribe button, and make sure you have that bell. Hit that bell so you can get all the notifications when we have new content for you. Number 9. Kite Man. I love Kite Man, but no matter what suit I see him in, pretty much all of them are ridiculous because, well, I mean, he's so ridiculous. Kite Man has to be one of the highlights of the Harley Quinn animated series. Although I'm a bit behind right now, to be honest, he has been one of the greatest characters that stand out to me from that show, and honestly, I love how much dimension they give Kite Man. Like, this show made me such a Kite Man fan, and even though, yeah, I think his suit is dumb, that doesn't mean that I don't love Kite Man. When it comes to his suit, of course, it is pretty dumb because, I mean, well, he wears a kite on his back. That's pretty ridiculous, which he uses, or attempts to use, to commit crimes. But that doesn't mean I love him any less. In fact, I probably love him even more because of how dumb his look and his gimmick are. Hell yeah! Number 8. Original Kang the Conqueror. Even though I do love Kang, and also I personally do love his look, even I cannot deny that he looks absolutely ridiculous. From the helmet to the tunic down to the metallic adornments on his outfit here. This look is definitely one that seems to have emerged from a time storm, but I wouldn't necessarily guess from the future myself. Although something that you do have to admire and admit about it is that it is iconic, it's striking, and it stands out. The original Kang look was created by Jack Kirby, who truly is a legendary artist, and despite the fact that, you know, this look now feels dated, the fact remains that this costume has pretty much remained the same throughout the character's long history, which I think is a testament to, you know, how striking and iconic it is. When it comes to his standard look, you know, this is pretty much it. So yes, it might seem ridiculous, but it certainly is memorable, and despite being silly, is still very clearly loved by a lot of us. Even in the MCU, they pretty much left this look as is. They just kind of like texturized it, I think, a little bit, and other than that, yeah, I mean, it looks great in the MCU, even though objectively ridiculous. Number 7. New 52 Riddler. I love the Riddler as a villain, but not all of his looks have been smash hits. Included in the lot that are not so great is his redesign from the New 52. We first see him, I believe, as an inmate in Arkham Asylum there. He wears a bandana with 2 holes cut out as, you know, places for his eyes to go, the usual Arkham inmate suit, and of course sports that famous, but honestly very terrible, green question mark mohawk, but trimmed all the way down. It's definitely a look, but it's not a look that I'm really a fan of for Riddler, I will tell you that. I like New 52 Riddler the best when he's in a suit decorated with question marks. Even the Jim Carrey version of this character in question mark bespeckled spandex is way preferred to me over this look. Fortunately, as New 52 would go on, this design would evolve and change. Thank goodness. New 52 was an interesting time for a lot of people in redesigns. Number 6. Marvel Now High Evolutionary. Everyone right now wants to talk about how great the High Evolutionary is, and I get it. In Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, he was a horrific villain, and Chukwudi nailed the role completely. He really made for a good and true classic villain. But let's take a look at the High Evolutionary in the comics. What is he like? Well, he's about as ridiculous looking as the harebrained science schemes he ends up involved in. I can tell you that much. Well, pretty much every look he's had looks completely weird to me. I think one of the most strange, for me personally, is the one he wore during the 2012 Marvel Now event. Here he donned his normal metal suit, but with more added studs. Number 5. Calendar Man's Calendar Cape. I mean, you have to give him some points for super committing, but the Calendar Man cape is pretty objectively ridiculous, I would say. This costume at least also came with somewhat of an improved gimmick with more deadly weapons at his disposal as well. I believe the first appearance of the Calendar Cape was in issue 312 of Batman. Instead of him being a magician who is secretly a criminal, fond of riddles and various antics tied to days of the week, holidays, and even seasons, this time around Calendar Man was more fixated on the days of the week and the gods that they were named after, theming many of his crimes around them. Although, to be honest, if I were going to cosplay as Calendar Man, I would definitely wear a calendar cape. Number 4. Shocker. I mean, Shocker is just all around pretty ridiculous in the comics, I think. We can all agree on that, and his costume is no exception. Shocker basically looks like he took a sofa, gutted it, and turned it into his costume, which perhaps makes sense when you consider his abilities. He typically attempts to shock Spider-Man, so perhaps being insulated helps him to protect himself against his own shock-inducing weapons? I don't know. Still, you can't deny that even if there is some kind of practical use for this look, that he doesn't look absolutely ridiculous in it, because he definitely does. And honestly, I'm not really even sure if there's a practical use for this suit. I'm just trying to help make it make sense. I want it to make sense, but I don't know if there is a reason for why he wears it. Number 3. Batman the Animated Series Condiment King. Condiment King is one of my all-time favorite villains because he simply is so ridiculous. What can I say? I'm a sucker for ridiculous dumb characters, especially villains. But him also being a villain armed to the teeth with condiments also means he's gonna look pretty ridiculous as he roams the town, squirting people with ketchup and mustard. That being said, his look in the animated series still takes the cake for one of the dumbest of all of his looks. Of course, this was done on purpose. You can tell pretty much everyone that has designed a Condiment King look is, in on the joke. What I really love about this ridiculous look is the fact that he's literally wearing white underwear over his suit, which is just hilarious. Such a play on ridiculous costumes in general. Costumes that we think look great, but are still kind of ridiculous. Also white underwear when you're firing condiments. Dangerous. Number 2. First Modoc. The very first appearance of Modoc was in Tales of Suspense issue number 94. This design is another created by Jack Kirby, which throughout the years has mainly remained unchanged. Sure, there have been different Modocs and some alternate looks offered to us, but the main Modoc look has pretty much remained about the same. A suit that contains a giant head with little limbs fully sheathed in purple metal, and all seemingly floating and contained by a hover chair which Modoc uses to get around. The implication here is that his little legs can no longer support the weight of his massive head and brain. The look is ridiculous, sure, but it really does help Modoc to stand out. And it's also this dumb look that has kind of helped to inform his character over the years, which also I love. While he often yearns to be as terrifying as the words that his name stands for implies, he also is just super ridiculous. Number 1. Cod Piece's Cod Piece. Cod Piece, of course, is none other than a Doom Patrol villain because, well, I mean, look at this guy. His whole thing is weapons. A very specific weapon located in a very specific place. It's a big red gun that he wears on a harness, acting as a weaponized, well, cod piece. Why this costume? Why this gimmick? That's a good question. Because when he was in high school, he once asked a girl out and she turned him down for being quote unquote too small. Now, she didn't mean what he thought she did. She meant simply that he was too short. Misinterpreting this and seeking to prove himself, he became the criminal known as Cod Piece. In the comics, I believe he was a one and done villain. I feel like I'd be nervous wearing a costume like this because if someone shot back at your weapon, the location of it might result in you being damaged in some pretty sensitive parts. So definitely makes sense that he was a one and done villain though. I mean, I feel like, what else are you gonna do with this guy? That's about it. I'll see you again real soon, but until then, you stay nerdy, YouTube. Bye!